everyone.
And Mike Abrams is here also.
Mike.
Yeah, everyone. I don't know everybody here.
Here comes Jason.
Hello to
Howdy.
everyone.
Hi.
I don't know about you guys. This is my first time doing anything like this. Even having like a video call with more than like one person. So just a little point of order. If you are, I would ask everyone to, for the moment, maybe just to mute your mic unless you are one of the starting participants. And we'll try to minimize kind of background noise as much as possible. But obviously, if you have a question or comment, then please do jump in at the right moment. This is going to be very casual. This is going to be very, we're just going to hang out and enjoy each other's company and talk about someone who we very much care about, their work and their life. And I'm very excited to be able to do this with all of you.
Well, see that Mary Stefan, Eric's editor, is with us.
Yes.
Just
Mary, would you like to introduce yourself and just say a few?
Oh well. Yes. So maybe some people already know of my existence. I'm Mary Stephen, and I was Eric's last editor from Winter's Tale to the very end.
Wow.
But I started with him on Aviator's Wife. And I was his editing assistant, and I was also doing some extra work, cameo role in Aviator's Wife. And then I also co-wrote some of the music in some of the films. Yeah. And of course that I'm actually Canadian from Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Voila.
Can you tell us some of the music that you worked on for his films?
Winter's Tale was Winter's Tale. The opening piano piece, actually, I played that on my piano because actually he didn't want to have the piece re-recorded in studio by a professional on a big piano, because he wanted that sort of like a amateur kind of sound. And also Rendez-vous de Paris, we also wrote that together. Aviator's Wife, in fact, we wrote that together. And Summer's Tale, we wrote that together. So basically, Eric starts a musical phrase, and he writes the lyrics, and then I finish the piece, kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
I arranged the piece, yeah.
There was that sea shanty in A Summer's Tale. Is that the one you're talking about? Was that
the one that he when they were out on the boat?
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, and so it was rearranged for the accordion, and in fact the sort of improvised dialogue afterwards with the musician complaining about all this notes that didn't exist for the accordion. That was because we arranged the music on the piano, of course.
Oh, wow. That film was never got a theatrical release in the United States, even though all of Rohmer's films, almost all of them did. But for some reason, that one fell through the cracks and did not get a release here.
That was
Summer's Tale?
A Summer's Tale?
We all saw it as, it's been for years now that we've had many opportunities to see it, but it wasn't in theaters the way that almost all the others were.
Really? I thought that actually there was one that was released very, very late, recently, something like that.
I think that was A Summer's Tale, right? It came in 2011 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I forgot about that. It didn't get released at the time, at any rate. I can't remember whether The Tree, the Mayor, and the Mediatek got a standard release. Maybe that one didn't either.
It probably didn't, because that said, I just read an article in the New Yorker today by Richard Brody, and he actually talked about that the Tree, the Mayor, and the Mediatek is the one that's very rarely seen in the States.
I think now that the releases are over, we do get a chance to see those other films just as much. I know that I've had many opportunities to see both of them, but at the time, he was very popular here. He was a staple of the art houses in the United States. He would always get distribution, so it was odd when a few didn't.
Right, yeah.
So The Tree, the Mayor, and the Media, I mean, that's like such a specifically French film in a way that many of his other films are not, perhaps. So I can kind of understand why.
Yeah, and also that one was very, very much independently produced, because it was produced by his own little company, the company Eric Rohmer. And we did it all in our spare time, kind of thing. I think we all talked about it in his biography, and so it was actually released in one cinema, and he didn't do any publicity or anything, and in Paris, and then it grew, like more cinemas joined in and so on, and so it was very, it's very much an even in the method of production and of distribution, it was very experimental. So that may be why that it didn't get wide distribution abroad.
What made that different from some of his other movies? Because he often had a very small crew. It doesn't seem as if he had stars in The Tree, the Mayor.
Yes, but I mean, even in that context, the other ones are professionally produced. Most of them are produced by the Film de Los Angeles, and whereas and that's that's the traditional method of getting the funding beforehand, and everyone in place, contracts and all kinds of stuff. But the Tree de Mayor is like something that he decided to do, and he wanted to prove that you could do it without any like any amateur independent or first filmmaker, and that you could do it with friends, and that we were not raising money at all. We were not paid. We had a contract with a percentage of the film, and in fact, of course, the wild thing is that we all got paid eventually, like 10 years down the road, more than we would have if we had been paid as technicians, and so that it was shot on weekends and whatnot in houses that were provided by other people, like the chateau. You couldn't have more than 2 actors at a time, so that's why the chateau scenes were all like 2 actors, and we were all working on a day job and doing this at when we could. I was editing this at night and so on. So but he wanted to prove that. He wanted to prove that it could be done.
It's one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I love that film.
Yes.
But it sounds as if mainly the reason it was distributed a little bit less is just because it was done apart from Los Angeles and apart from a big organization.
Yes. It was, and it was also his wish to distribute it also in that way, and sort of like a wild goose kind of thing, and not have a system to support it. So, in fact, the day of the release, there's one of the major newspapers in Paris. It says they reviewed the film without having seen it, and saying that there's a new Rohmer out today. Nobody has seen it, but I think that you should all run and go catch it. So everybody did, and so it went quickly into another cinema. Yeah.
Wow.
Wonderful. So I thank you so much for those opening comments, and we'll definitely get back more into some more chance to ask questions and all that. I'm not going to make this too formal, but I did want to just kind of throw a few comments out there for guiding our discussion. And one thing also, we are waiting for Marie Rivière join us again. We had her set up earlier, and then we had a little bit of time to kill. So she went off, and hopefully she'll be back shortly. But I'm just going to go ahead and just throw a few introductory kind of comments out there for kind of, well, for me, I took my prompts, the questions that I posted in the Facebook chat. For me, I was reflecting on a couple of on the first two, which is mainly how has Eric Rohmer's work changed your life, and how has, or what does a Rohmerian cinema for the 21st century look like? And when I think of Rohmer and the effect that he's had on myself as a filmmaker and as a thinker for cinema, I'm finding myself realizing it's coming more and more and more to this sort of fundamental aspect of being, of essence, of what is the being of things, including things like films. And when I was looking through some of Rohmer's writing, just to get recollected for this talk, his writing on his piece Celluloid and Marble, which unfortunately I haven't read the whole thing because I haven't been able to find English translation of the entire essay series. So if anyone here happens to know of one existing, please let me know, because I would love to read the whole thing. But all I have is excerpts that have showed up in other compilations. But one of the things that really leaped out to me that and this is something that I would loosely organize my thoughts on this, is thinking of, there's sort of three lessons, there are three quests that I think Rohmer has to offer us in the 21st century. And they all kind of have to do with this question of the being of things. This quote from Celluloid and Marble that I'm just going to read, it's a short one. He says, "The ability to reproduce exactly, simply, is the cinema's surest privilege. But then the objection will be raised, how does the creator intervene? What constitutes his freedom? His freedom is there throughout, and it is very great. What a filmmaker worthy of the name wants to make us share is not his admiration for museums, but the fascination which objects themselves exert over him." And this word fascination is what really leaps out for me, because of the sort of the implications of fascination can be taken to be meaning that the sort of scientific interest, the desire for knowledge of an object, but even more so, it also carries the implication of love, to be fascinated with something. There is a certain aspect of love involved in training one's gaze onto the object. I know I'm talking about this all in very kind of philosophical terms, but the thing I find so vital about Rohmer's cinema is the way in which I've had an experience with each of his films, I would say, or the vast majority of them, which leave me with this feeling, which is maybe more than a feeling. And for me, it's impossible to describe. I think we've all probably experienced something like it when you've had a great aesthetic experience of some sort. For me, I think back to my first Rohmer was Le Rayon Vert. And shortly after the film ended, I saw it here in Vancouver at the Cinematheque, and it was a beautiful summer day. And I'm actually going to pause for a sec. Marie Rivière is joining us. So I'm just going to, let's just welcome her. See if I can find, oh, there she is. Bonjour, Marie. Okay, well, that's connecting. I'll just keep talking. It's just getting connected. So yeah, I mean, but basically, watching the Rayon Vert, and then I walked to the ocean, to the seawall here in Vancouver shortly after that ended, and tried to see Le Rayon Vert for myself. I did not actually see it, and
coucou.
There we go. Bonjour.
Salut.
Attends, qui est-ce qui a dit salut?
C'est moi, mais quand même.
Mais je ne te vois pas.
Mais tu es sur ton ordi?
Oui, ça.
Alors, est-ce que tu bascules à vers la gauche, enfin dans ton truc, et tu vas voir tout le monde. Je ne sais pas si c'est pareil.
Non, c'est pas pareil, Mary. Toi, tu as des trucs.
Je suis sur mon téléphone.
Ben voilà. Donc moi, je suis pas sur mon téléphone. Et, pour moi, c'est très difficile. Et toi, tu es très fort.
How can she see everybody? Like I'm on my phone, I can just swing to the left and I can see people.
Absolutely. I can see Marie Rivière, Nathan Douglas, Dan Salit, Mary.
Okay, you can. So you can see. Okay, you can see. So that's okay. Yeah.
Well.
On the computer.
Harry, how are you?
Ça va? You know, we are confined in Paris, so we have to wait for this to say hi to each other.
Yes. We're confined everywhere.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Marie. I was starting to make a few remarks, but I want to ask, would you like to say something just to say hello to everybody?
I think I just said hello to everybody.
That's true.
Oh, Mary, you will translate for me because my English is not good.
Your English is okay.
English is much better than our French.
Dan too. You know, Dan made a beautiful film.
Marie saw my film this summer, and I never even met her.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't even at the theater when she was there. I feel bad.
Last year.
Yes, it was in June.
You were in the Festival des Champs-Élysées.
Oui.
Ah oui, ah bon?
He was. Yes.
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 Last year, what month?
It was in
last
June.
year?
En juin.
No. 2 years ago.
En juin. 2 years ago.
No. Il y a 9 mois. 9 mois.
He made
9 mois.
9 months.
Okay. I was out of Paris at that time. Yeah. Oh, too bad.
You are always out of Paris.
But I'm in Paris now, confined.
Yeah, confined. Oh, okay.
Is everybody staying at home in Paris?
Yes.
Yeah. It starts to be very heavy, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's only 5 days, Marie. It's only 5 days. There's a lot more to come. I hate to say.
Yes, but it's not possible.
Well,
maybe we just keep this Zoom going for the whole confinement and look at each other every so often.
Yeah, I mean, we could hang out here for 23 hours, so I think it cuts off automatically at 24, but we're welcome to hang out as long as you want.
Where are you? You.
Where? Who?
What? No.
Everybody.
You're in New York.
Nathan is in Vancouver.
No, but you. Where are you?
I'm in New York.
Yes. And the one with Nathan.
I'm in Vancouver. Yeah.
You are in Vancouver.
Yeah.
You have quarantine?
I have what?
Quarantine.
It's voluntary quarantine at the moment. It's not enforced.
Okay.
Many of the people here are from Vancouver. The first people on the chat were all from Vancouver, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think that I see some people. Well, we have a Japanese friend here, but he doesn't seem to be. I don't know whether he's really online.
Japanese friends?
Yeah, you know Shin Seto. He's here.
Oh, there.
Hi.
Why can't we see him? Oh yes, I guess he's because.
What city are you in?
Shinseto,
He's in Yamagata.
Ah.
Hi.
look at this.
Oh, here he
Oh,
is.
Shinseto, you are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Japan.
Do you know this? Hello.
Welcome.
Do you know Cleo?
Cleo?
Where's Cleo?
At home.
Ah, yeah.
No, she's on my telephone now.
You know, there's a singer in France called Cleo, and she had a song called Eric est mort.
Oh,
Oh, really?
And it's very, very touching. Yeah.
It is this. Listen.
Oh, wow.
It's not funny at all, but can you hear it?
A little bit.
We can hear it, yeah.
Can you hear it?
If you want to put a link to the video in the chat, Marie, we could do that too.
Yeah, or you can find it online actually, because I don't know whether she knows how to do it. But it's Clio, it's CLIO.
She's from Montreal. She's living in Montreal, and she has been doing a lot of comics for Eric Rohmer's films.
Okay.
Yes, good. And this is.
There's a video of it, and it starts with Haide Polikoff.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That's good news.
Dan, do you mind posting that in the chat so we can reference that?
I just tried to do it. Let's see if it.
Yes, but I want to talk
about. Oh, this is giving it to you, Nathan. I'm trying to figure out how to.
Oh, it's okay. I'll post it to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean, for sending that.
And there are two versions of that song, because after a while, Fabrice Lucchini heard the song and actually recorded another version with her.
Ah, really? Does he record? Is he a recording artist in France?
No. But for that he did.
Ooh, where's that coming from? It's very funny that Fabrice Lucchini was. He became a big star at one point in France, and for a while he was part of the Rohmer stock company.
Yes.
And then at a certain point, things changed. I don't remember whether it was that film La Discrète that made him a star.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
It was La Discrète. Good film.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's well known to everybody.
Yes, but it was Full Moon in Paris that launched him.
It did, really?
Yes, it is. Because really it was successful, and Fabrice was very funny, and
he was good in it.
It's at the moment it started, but you know why it continued mostly because he did a lot of theater show, one-man show on stage, and he loved saying French text, but that he learned it at the contact of Eric Rohmer when he was preparing Perceval. And together they had the same taste for French text of the literature, and they were always telling poems together. And this is reinforced the taste of Fabrice Lucchini for science text and literature, poems, and that's why he's the most famous in France.
And in fact,
sharing what you love in real time.
Yes.
What, could you say that again?
Yeah, sorry.
I couldn't hear you.
So there's a bit of cross chatter. Just go. Please go ahead. Yeah.
In fact, the year that I arrived in Paris, that was how I met Rohmer. It was because I was his student, and I went to his office to get some information for my own production. But then he invited me to tea, and they were rehearsing Perceval. So that was a day that he was going to the theater with Fabrice Lucchini.
Yes.
To see a performance with Suzanne Flon, because he wanted Suzanne Flon to play Perceval's mother.
Okay.
So he invited me along, and at that time I was speaking very bad French and certainly couldn't understand most of what they were talking about. And Fabrice was reciting all these medieval verses all the time So I was extremely intimidated. That was my first meeting with the Fabrice.
Yeah, that's it. They were very close.
Yes.
They were very close. But I can hear a baby.
Huh?
Later, I can hear a child.
Yes, that's my grandson. Astor.
No, they were very close and sharing the same taste for literature and poems.
Fabrice was in New York several years ago at the French Institute to introduce a movie. I think it was La Discrète. And he talked with the audience, and he's very funny and kind of on stage all the time. And he was talking a lot about being in the Rohmer ghetto, as being an actor and not being able to escape the Rohmer ghetto, and that La Discrète helped him get out of this ghetto. And he was being very lighthearted. It wasn't disrespectful exactly, but you had the feeling that he was trying to get a wider audience.
Sometimes he says it very often, just because he doesn't want to be in adoration. I don't know how to tell you, but actually he is very sad and very respectful of him.
Yes.
But he wants to show another way of how he loves him. Sometimes it's very surprising for me too. He did the same at La Cinémathèque, but it was really good.
I think that the audience understood. I think it didn't sound hard. He was being a little funny, he was talking about his career.
And it is very funny, the way, and Eric, he loved the way that even Fabrice could laugh at him or could laugh about Perceval.
Mm-hmm. And Fabrice could imitate Eric very, very well. Yes.
Tu peux dire, et devant lui, et ça ne le gênait pas qu'on...
Oui, c'est vrai.
Quand c'était avec amitié, évidemment.
Oui. He has always... I mean, Fabrice is very good at always, making tribute to Rohmer.
Always.
Yes, always. Whenever he was invited to be a host or, presenter at the César show, he always, in his speeches, he always tells about his experience, his gratitude to Rohmer. Yeah.
That's very nice. I always think of him first from Claire's Knee, from Le Jardin de Claire, and not from Perceval, because he was so vivid in that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very funny in Claire's Knee, yes. It was a kind of improvisation, what he did in Claire's Knee.
Which is a good question to ask you, Marie, and also you, Mary, because I guess you have been in some of the films. Was improvisation common in his movies? I know that Le Rayon Vert was not scripted, but other than that, was he open to improvisation?
No, not really.
No, vas-y, answer.
Yeah, no. I mean, only Rayon Vert was improvised. I mean, otherwise, he has a little bit of leeway with some sort of like documentary style things in the Maire, the Dream de Maire and the Médiathèque, in the interviews sections, and in Summer's Tale in the interview with the sailor singer, but the singing sailor, but no. Otherwise, it's every word, every comma has to be counted. Yeah.
Would he correct the actor if a word was dropped?
Absolutely. Just ask Marie. Yes, absolutely.
On the set?
Sometimes, but no, I don't know, because sometimes it depends. Because if you show that if you tell him that you forget something or that you don't like this word, he's going to pay attention to what you are going to say. So if you want to change a word or change the sentence, you don't have to say him before, because otherwise you cannot discuss with him before. Otherwise, he will pay a lot of attention to you if you say it correctly. If you want to change it, change the dialogues or just a word that is very difficult to say, we had not to tell him in advance. Because it could, ça pouvait passer if we were not saying anything in advance. But if we were asking him if it was allowed to change this word because it was difficult to say, he said, no, it's not difficult. Look at me, I say it very well. Sur ce point, je ne suis ni moins bien, ni
Oui, c'est ça.
Of course, you can say it. I tell him, oh, Eric, you never say it in life like this with a friend. Or I said, yes, I say it. Okay, but you're a man. So if you wanted to change something, we had not to tell him in advance. Otherwise, it's impulsive. Otherwise, no. He was not looking at the text, at the scenario. He was just looking at you acting in front. He had the pleasure to see. He was sharing the pleasure that you could feel when acting. He was sharing it with us. So that is. He was not spying at us. I mean, neither spying at the text, and there was not a script who was spying at the scenario. Oh, neither. So,
did he ever? I remember an interview. Are they scripts?
Yes, I found them.
For what?
What? Keep talking.
I was going to ask, I believe in an interview, he said that he was not interested in giving actors close direction about how to deliver lines. Is that true? Did he ever come to you and say, no, you're doing it wrong, have a different emotion?
No. He hated that.
You wouldn't do that, would he?
No. His cinema is not psychological.
No, absolutely. It's he wants the natural, the most authentic natural things to come out of.
Mary, you said that you first met him. You went to rehearsal for Percival. Did he rehearse generally a lot, or was that sort of a unique circumstance given the production?
No, he does rehearse. He does rehearse. I mean, you can ask Marie, but he even informally rehearse, because we have the luxury of time.
That's it. You're right.
Yeah. We could stay in his office for days, hours, and months, and just that's before things are even finalized. That they are already informally talking, and then they are rehearsing. They are going through things, and then of course, I mean that goes on for a long time, Marie?
Yeah, absolutely. A year.
Yeah,
not every day, of course. So
but it's not an industry. I mean, that's why I'm always horrified when I hear the word film industry. I mean, we come from a system or a film family that is anything but industry, not at all industry. It's like, really, who can afford to talk about your film and rehearse and throw ideas around for a year before you shoot?
And during those rehearsals, would he correct emotions? Would he correct would he do the things that he didn't like to do on the set during rehearsal? Would he tell you how to deliver things? Would he talk about the motivations? Would he talk? I know that he did not care for psychology as an approach, but I wonder if he ever told you what not to do certain things or not to say things in a certain way.
Not really like that. Maybe that what he was observing the most is if we were really living the situation with our body, it means that the architecture of the body for him is not the way you pose or the way you are, but just the way you move. You are in movement. So that is capital for him. And for us actors, it's a very good teaching to act well, because whether you're free with your body, with your movements, you can you feel your emotions are more authentic than if you are just staying like frozen in the frame, which he hated that. You see, I still continue to talk with my hands because this is because I used to talk like this.
You once said that you like to shoot in a square aspect ratio because you like to see people's hands.
Yes, but there are some close-ups. I remember for me in The Aviator's Wife, and they are not the best. We had very few in An Autumn Tale Mary. Very few close-ups.
Very few. He didn't like close-ups. He likes like what Marie was saying, the architecture of the body.
Yes.
He likes to see the body, the human body in space. He thinks that movement and the way that the body is situated, the way that it's presented in space, tells a lot about the character, which is true. I mean, and that he often says to me that he thinks the long shot is much more expressive than a closer shot, and it's quite often the case.
Yes, but sometimes he used it in the montage when editing, because it allows him to change or not. Did you had a lot of rushes?
No, I mean we never have lots of rushes. We don't. I never. So everything is micro. Like we look at everything in a very microscopic way. Like every take, we decide on the smallest movement, the smallest moment to take. Yeah.
To take, but it means what? That you were cutting a lot?
No. I mean, we were deciding which moment is the most interesting. C'est plus intéressant pour sur l'acteur. Oui.
It's interesting at which point of
for him the most interesting for him, and he's putting himself in the seat from the point of view of the audience. Like, what would be the most interesting for the audience?
But the audience was him.
Yeah, yes, but he knows his audience. That's the whole thing too. We're coming into another aspect of his work in terms of that he knows his audience very well, and although that he was gaining new audience all the time, his whole method of working is that he made economical films, economical productions, because he says he knew the size of his audience, and that if he were to raise the budget, however much, to have big production values or big commercial stars, it wouldn't raise the number of his audience enough to justify that expenses.
Mary, if I can jump in for 1 sec.
Yeah.
There's a question I wanted to draw attention to on the timeline. If you're able to see or in the chat window, question from Jay saying, would you be able to speak about that?
About the teacher in Rohmer?
I'm just going to read it out for the recording's sake.
Sure.
Question is, I would be interested in hearing Mary and Marie talk about the relationship between Rohmer, the filmmaker, and Rohmer, the teacher, or even just the theme of instruction. You, Mary, referred to being his student, and then Rohmer's experience of making educational programs for TV, the way that his films engage with teaching in a way that feels very different from the way modern art generally rejects didacticism, even while being didactic themselves.
Well, when I said that I was his student, I wasn't really. I mean, I was for a few weeks because he was teaching. Because when I got to Paris, I was with an American exchange program. I was with a University of Wisconsin program of 1 year in Paris, and then I realized I was quite horrified to realize that all the courses that were offered were semiology courses and very theoretical courses. And the only thing that I could find in the universities that we were allowed to take was Rohmer every, I don't know which night, I forget which night, but for 3 hours talking about the current production that he was making, a current film that he was making. So in terms of teaching, he was a teacher in that sense. And then very quickly I dropped out of the program, so I no longer went to his classes. But that was when I started making my own films and got to know him. And then he hired me he came to my shootings and hired me to be his editor's assistant. But I would stress the fact that I think that Marie would agree that although he wasn't a formal teacher for me afterwards, I think that he had been my teacher and my mentor or my life, or his life or my life. I mean, all the time that we were working together, because I think that there's something about him is that he was not only a teacher in the sense that he was very very good at transmitting knowledge, but most of all, he was very curious himself. That Marie was talking about earlier, that he's very curious about everything, and he has this kind of openness about learning. So, in fact, we can be talking about something, a word or something. I mean, one thing that I always remember is in his office, he always has this huge dictionary right behind him, behind his seat. So whenever you talk about something that he didn't know about, he would take out the dictionary and he would look in it to find out, what it meant and what it was about. And he was very keen on, learning about it from you or from whoever who was in front. So it was like it's about learning. He was also an eternal learner. Yes. So that is very very that's very interesting, because a teacher that's I think that's the kind of best teacher is when they are also open to learning.
Yes, open to learning.
He made many wonderful educational films for television.
Yes.
Some of them are really quite wonderful.
Yeah. Some of them are quite funny too.
Mm-hmm.
Where that he acted in himself.
Oh, I can't remember. What are they?
I think there was one that was on architecture or something, that where he had a cameo role or something. I don't remember which one exactly.
Did he ever have opinions on, say, like the historical films of Rossellini, which were intended to be educational, even though they were depicting not fictional, but there were these historical subject pieces that were done in a very dry way. Did he ever talk about that at all, or talk about the educational aspect of that? Or
not to me. No.
Okay.
quite interesting because he seemed very sure that his films would be successful. He seemed to not have any conflict between making the film he wanted to make and making a film that audiences would like. And he seemed to be right most of the time. He seemed to be correct most of the time, that he could make a return on his films if he was intelligent, if he was careful about how much money to spend. So, and this is interesting because many of us who imitated him, who like loved his films and stole from them and make our own movies in his name, many of us would not say that at all, that we have any connection, we have any knowledge about the audience, that we have any confidence that people would like what we make. But he had that confidence. It was like he was Howard Hawks or someone in a commercial context. He seemed to know that his audience would like what he liked. Which is, it's just such a difference from the way a lot of art filmmakers, a lot of filmmakers in art cinemas would think. But he always had that, he always seemed to feel that it would work.
I don't know. I don't know if he was that confident. Wait, but I think he had, but he didn't care. The thing is that the whole key word to his work and his life is independence, really. And this independence he really valued. He absolutely needed his freedom. You think
he didn't care?
No, I mean he didn't care whether. I don't think that it mattered so much to him that. What I meant is that he cared about making the films. He cared most about making the films that he wanted to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he didn't care about anything else. I mean, that whether the films were big commercial successes or not, as long as they didn't, that they would make they would break even. I mean, that they would be. So as long as that's what I was saying earlier, that he made sure that he didn't get into a whole star system and that kind of thing.
I thought, I don't understand well. I thought you were saying that he did not care much about whether it was his film were successful or not. No, it's not what you said.
No.
You're right. Good.
Marie, I have a question for you. You appeared briefly in Conte d'Hiver, in the scene in the bus. I'm curious, the scene in the bus in Conte d'Hiver, which for me is maybe my favorite scene in all of Rohmer. It's one of the most powerful moments I've ever seen in a film. And I'm just wondering what it was like to film that scene. And I'm trying not to say too much about it in case people haven't seen it, but I guess that it might be impossible to hide what happens in the moment. But anyway, I was just wondering, would you speak a bit about what it was like to sort of be dropped into that film in a small role, but at the most important moment in the entire film? What was it? Did Rohmer, tell you how important this moment was? Did he give it? How did he prepare you for that?
No, okay, I understand the question. No, he did not explain me why I was doing this part. No, he just asked me to do it, and I did it. I didn't used to ask him. No, I was not. Curious about knowing why I'm doing this or not. It was just daily. I think the thing that you must not, you must keep in your mind that we were seeing each other very often, so it was not exceptional to if you want to be on the bus at the end of the film. Okay. It was just continuing of life. It was nothing. It was not a part of the life, so it wasn't a surprise. See, it's not a big choice. I don't know, it's a kind of symbol. Hein? Tu dis, Mary, c'est une symbol, I think, but I never asked him which symbol. Actually, I don't like to ask.
I don't think of him as someone who cares about symbols.
Yes.
I
think he does.
I think that I'm not sure that if it's a symbol, it's not deliberate. I don't think.
You don't think? I do think it's deliberate.
I mean, in terms of what, like what kind of symbol? Symbol de quoi?
First, when I am in the bus in a winter tale, I am the wife, and I am the friend of the
male star.
Yeah.
At the moment, he meets the girl. Well, I am there. Why am I there? You don't think it means something for him? I do think it means something for him.
It does mean something to me. But, I don't know. I'm sure. Yeah.
For
well,
him.
You mean that? Yeah.
Not a choice by hazard or random or what? No. No, I know what it is for.
You think he wanted the associations that people have with your other roles?
It can be both, yes. It can be both, because in the Green Ray, I was lucky. I'm lucky at the end, and because I received something from which can be mystic, and it's the same in Wintertal. I'm here.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I mean, both films are about faith, really.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's why I'm not in the bus for nothing. I am in the bus for something.
And I think that I mean, Winter's Tale. I really love Winter's Tale because it's the ending is.
I know.
Yes, and also the. Are you the ending? Also the ending. I mean, the ending. Can you imagine when they meet at the bus stop? It's so cheeky. I mean, c'est tellement osé that only he could have done it. You know, I mean, like nobody else can do it.
Nobody else can do this because c'est amené par toute le dé.
Ouais.
C'est amené par la foi.
Mais oui, c'est ça.
It's bring by a faith, a dimension of faith and mysticism that you are not astonished at the last moment to see them meeting at the stop. It seems normal.
It's filmed as if it was normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of gets back to what Nathan was saying about the kind of beingness of his films, right? Like you can believe a moment like that because the movie is so inhabits that world until you get to that moment that it doesn't play as cheap or as an intrusion. It feels organic in that.
And the actors are very lighting, very. Where is Keith Alish? Is that here? Is he?
Keith is here.
I'm here. Hello.
Is that who you were asking about?
Keith.
Here. Yes.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah. Hey. Hi.
Okay. You don't speak a lot. You don't talk a lot.
No. I was letting you talk.
Do you know each other from?
Yeah, we had lunch back when she was in here for presenting a movie about Eric Rohmer for BAM.
Oh, the movie that you made.
Yeah, the movie that Marie made. Right, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I love that film, Marie.
Let me show you what I left. Oh, God. This is the importance of the colors. The blue one in the blue one bag, paper bag is the aviator's wife. Why? Just because it is blue. Oh, and text like this, which works with the typewriter. Comment tu dis? Machine à écrire.
The typewriter. Yes.
Typewriter. Can you see it, Marie?
Oui, oui, c'est bon.
Do you think it's not interesting? I think it is very interesting. It is the thing that he would have appreciated the most. And the color of the bag is the same.
It's very important. It's very important. He has the color coordinated covers of his scripts.
See, I'm right.
Yes, yes. Every script, the cover is the dominant color of the movie. Yeah,
he was very proud of this, and
yes.
I don't know why he did. In the red bag is the red attenteur, which is very funny in attenteur that there are only dialogues. Nothing else but dialogues. Their only consigne is elle se lève. She stands up. That's all.
What script is this?
C'est lequel? C'est lequel? Automne, Conte d'hiver, Conte d'automne.
Autumn.
Automne.
Hey, that's my favorite.
That's your favorite?
I like it very much too.
I had a lot of fun. So, see, I tried to change the text.
Did you succeed?
No.
No.
No. Because I think I showed him, and I think he was horrified to see what I did. So it was fun. That's all. And what else?
I think my favorite of your films is still The Aviator's Wife, just because it's the first time that we all saw you very close. I know that Percival was before that, but The Aviator's Wife was your big moment, I think, for Rohmer.
Yes, this is true. It is when he decided after the, comment tu dis, l'échec de Perceval?
It's the failure. There's a commercial failure for Perceval, yeah.
Perceval, he decided to do a new series, which is the
Comedies and Proverbs.
Comedies and he started it with me, and then we talked a lot during 1 year and more, 2 years, and
it's a very beautiful film.
You do think?
I love that film, The Aviator's Wife.
It's
really beautiful.
It's a blue and green film.
It's a blue and green film.
Did the way that I imagine you obviously spoke a lot in preparing for Aviator's Wife, did that when you did L'Oeil en Vert and later films, did you have to speak as much, or did you, once you kind of got to know each other, were you able to speak less in preparing for a role, or was it always lots and lots of talking to prepare?
Marie, tu peux me traduire?
Alors, est-ce qu'il y avait beaucoup de, est-ce qu'il fallait, what do you mean? I mean, lots to.
I think more if when two people are starting to work together, they may have to say a lot to understand each other, but as they, if they're working together again on the project, is less words needed.
Oui, c'était pour savoir si au moment de La femme de l'aviateur, non, au moment de plus tard, enfin, s'il fallait, c'est-à-dire si il fallait parlé beaucoup avec Rohmer pour se comprendre. Mais je crois que de toute façon, vous comprenez très bien. C'est-à-dire que vous n'avez pas besoin tellement de vous expliquer.
No, pas du tout. No, not at all. For the Green Ray, we did not talk about. I don't think we didn't talk. It was just a day-to-day living, meeting life. I was not very talkative at this time. Now I am more, but not at this time. I was rather a silent person. So he was very surprised at the end of the Green Ray, of the shooting of the Green Ray. He told me, "Wow, you did speak a lot." What? Because usually when we talk, it's always end very, very fast, because you don't talk a lot. It always ends very abruptly because you look like having nothing to say. Tu sais, tu veux dire, il me dit toujours, voilà, d'habitude les conversations avec toi, ça se termine toujours très vite. Et c'est vraiment, merci, tu as beaucoup parlé.
Yeah, there's something that I think that you have to understand, is that we were really like a family, or very close anyway. So we didn't only see each other when we were shooting a film. I mean, like Marie, me, and several of his closest collaborators, we were at his office, like taking tea and just talking very often, without any, sometimes without any specific project. Right. It's just yeah. Right. So in fact, that's also answers some of the question, because we knew each other very well in terms of, so we didn't have to really talk a lot.
You see this movie.
Hello, who is this one?
Hi, I was just going to jump in with a question. I was wondering how kind of articulate he was about the ideas behind his films, because I've been reading a lot of his film criticism, and he's obviously in his criticism, he's very articulate about other people's work and the kind of like moral and philosophical ideas behind them. And his films feel very driven by various moral and philosophical ideas. But I know some filmmakers are a little apprehensive about kind of analyzing their own work. So either in like rehearsals or the editing process or during the filming, was he expressing to you kind of any of the driving ideas behind his work?
Il a dit, Marie.
C'est-à-dire que est-ce qu'il expliquait ses motivations, ses trucs, je veux dire.
Il dit la même chose, que c'est le résultat d'une longue collaboration quotidienne qui ne parle pas du sujet, mais qui parle de tous les sujets à la fois.
Oui, that's what we were saying. Basically, no, just to answer the question first. No, he didn't really specifically, like some directors do, explain his motivation, his driving, whatever that drove him to do this and so on. It's more like a ongoing informal discussions on life, on love, on everything. So that's like he might tell the story of his upcoming project like a year, 2 years beforehand, and just say that, I'm interested to tell the story of a boy who did this and that and stuff, and that's about it. Yeah. C'est ça, no?
He used to prepare the film. It's the way is before, a long time before, to know the actors, and just because he liked them as human beings, more than like.
And of course, yeah, exactly. And he's also inspired by them. So, you know, like he doesn't finalize his final script before he knows who is going to be in it. So a lot of the times the you know, the role is, there's a lot of things that are similar to the person. Yeah.
The role is made for the person.
Yeah.
Okay. Autumnal also.
Yeah.
In the autobiography.
I was at this moment. I was in Autumnal. I was living in the country, and I think it gave him ideas.
Yeah.
Then he was projecting his own thoughts, his resentment, what he thinks about life. But he was inspired by his actresses. Then after, at the moment he could imagine, but that their body also in the frame. You know, he was going to steal the life of someone and make it act by or play by another person. Never. Not only because it was a moral choice, but because he was inspired by all the way the person was living, the way the things that they were telling him about life.
Yeah.
Is this way of filmmaking, because I want to connect this to what you're saying about the family aspect, and then there's this drawn from the fact that he was friends with you, he was drawing his ideas. Do you see this happening elsewhere in the French film world? You know, did he have an effect? Did other people pick up this as a practice, this very kind of like organic or ecologically, I don't know, small way of making films? Did it catch on with other filmmakers?
Est-ce que ça se passe chez les autres? Est-ce que ce genre de...
More or less, but not at this point. Not as long as him, because most of the time the actors and actresses, they don't have time, and they don't know, and the filmmakers, they don't really know if they are going to do this film. And the thing is different too, is that he was sure 1 year before that he was going to do the film. So it's kind of it gave him trust, comment tu dis, confiance en lui-même.
Confidence, yeah.
It gave him confidence, and he gave him the possibility to work with the actor a year before, which is not possible for some filmmakers. They don't have time, and the actors, they don't have time. It's not the way they like to do films.
There's an amazing story in the autobiography by Debec, where apparently for Le Jeune de Claire, he planted a flower a year ahead of time, and he knew the exact day that the flower was going to bloom.
Yes.
And he planned the shooting for that day, and it did. It bloomed on that day.
I know. That's what he was very proud of those desires.
That's amazing. That's more amazing than making a movie.
Yes, true. It's a part of his personality, which is very surprising, even for us. But I don't know. I think it's a way he could control everything, and that's what he liked the most. Is that he was creating everything. Marie is there to confirm or not.
Yes.
As an editor.
Yes, he.
Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. He was creating. Yeah, he was. He was inspiring. He was inspired by everything around him, and then he would create his own mixture.
Yes, and Yes, but for the Green Ray, he accepted that the dialogues, which were his net in a sort of, which was it's net. He accepted that there were no dialogues, so no net. So he was able to do new experiences also.
Mm-hmm. He actually liked to do new experiences. I mean, like for like it's a very paradoxical, because I mean people sometimes think of him as a like a
same film over and over.
Yeah, but in fact he's always driven by new experiences, like L'Anglaise-le-Duc, like yes, and it's like because he wanted to experiment with digital filmmaking and like special effects kind of thing. Yeah.
Mary, I actually wanted to ask you about L'Anglaise-le-Duc. Like, was the editing experience on that film significantly different from the editing experience? Yeah, I'd just be curious to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Yes, because we were, I mean, like I said, he wanted to do that to get into the whole digital chain of post-production. And in fact, it was prepared a long time before. Like we knew that he was going to do that a long time before, and so he actually made a short film, La Cambrure, before that. Yes, so that shooting with digital and editing in digital, so that we get an experience of we get a experience of what that whole chain would look like. And then when we got to L'Anglaise-le-Duc, which was shot mostly, on green screen, and then built on like layer after layer kind of thing. It was Buff company that was making, Pierre Buffin, who was making the special effects. And Pierre Buffin was already, his LA branch was already making like effects for Batman and stuff like that, but he was interested in working on this film for completely different reasons, like I just wanted to prove that Pierre Buffin also wanted to the experience of working on a sort of art film kind of thing. And I remember that we edited on Avid, and instead of like, today you would just do everything in the post-production lab or the post house and special effects house and stuff. But we built layer by layer in the Avid, in like every little window of those scenes, we would put the little figure in.
So you were actually building all of that with him sitting there, basically.
Yes,
okay, interesting.
Yes, all of that. Yes, in fact, those big scenes of the biggest ensemble scenes where you have things happening in every window kind of thing. We actually built everything.
Rebuilt.
Yeah, like in the editing, we put each layer into the timeline, which was extremely heavy for the machine. Yes.
Yes.
We English speakers who don't always understand all the nuances of the French language, but in that film, he seemed to go out of his way. It was about class, and he seemed to cast people according to the class, the indications of class in their speech and in their manner. Yes. So we might not have known really that Charlot Very or Rosette seemed more like a working class accent. But I guess he cast them in those roles.
Yes.
But it's interesting because it's something that we can miss easily across the language barrier.
Mary, I have unless you wanted to follow. Oh, sorry, Marie, did you want to follow up on that or?
Qu'est-ce qu'il a dit?
Non, l'accent, les accents des acteurs. En anglais, c'est le duc qui indique.
Leur classe.
Voilà, oui, oui.
Yeah, very good.
What were you going to ask?
I was going to ask an editing question. So going back to Tale of Winter, I was struck. It's the one I've seen the most recently, and I was struck by the Shakespeare play, the scene at the play, because it's basically only 1, 2, or 3 shots in that sequence, but you have to pick that moment. It's such a powerful moment because we're waiting for that moment when we go back to Charlotte and her reaction. And I was wondering what it was like editing that sequence with Rohmer. Like, how did you pick the right moment to cut back?
I mean, well, I think that it was I don't really remember which word where we cut back, but it's definitely the moment where she's moved by an act of faith, like that was the most important theme in the film. So because the actual play, of course, there wasn't a lot of footage. He just shot those the lines that were necessary, and it was really the moment of when she was struck by that the statue comes to life because of an act of faith kind of thing. I think that for that film, actually, what might be more interesting to point out is that, Rohmer doesn't like to use music in films. So usually he only uses music that you can hear, that you can see. I mean, that you can see being played. But for that, he decided to use that theme that I was talking about, that he came with a beginning of this music and asked me to actually I proposed to write the rest of the music, so we did, and then played it on the piano, and then I sort of convinced him to use the when there was the play and that the woman was playing the flute, to play also a verse of that theme, the same theme, and then also when Charlotte went into the cathedral at one point, there's a little bit of just a refrain of that same theme, and which makes her decide to leave. So all those that those pieces that are the recalls of it's sort of the recall of her faith that her love will come back, kind of thing. I think it was important to use the same theme, and this is not a usual Rohmer practice. I mean, he usually doesn't use music that way to so deliberately point out something, but in this film he agreed to it. Because it was organic enough to do so.
Marie, she was doing the music with Eric.
Oui, j'ai déjà raconté.
You said it. I'm sorry, I don't speak very well English.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais là? Tu manges quoi?
Un yaourt.
Ah oui, d'accord.
Yogurt.
There's another question. Thanks for that, Mary. There's another question that's come from the audience in the chat. I'm just going to read it out. The question is, did Rohmer talk about his time teaching in secondary school in the lycée, or did he prefer to keep those worlds separate?
He talked about it sometimes to me, yeah.
Yes.
But not. Yeah, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a problem.
No, not secret. No, he was talking very freely.
Did you ever meet his family?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same question. The biography, I think, makes the argument kind of that there were pretty two distinct silos in his life between the filmmaking family and his actual family. And I was going to ask the same question that Dan asked. Did you ever meet his family, or did he talk about his family much in the film settings?
Never.
Yeah.
No, he talked about them, but we never met them. We never met them until after the funeral.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in the biography, the sort of scene at the end of the biography where finally at the funeral these two families meet is like actually one of the more moving things I've read in recent years in fiction or nonfiction. I mean, it's after spending so much time reading that biography and seeing how he built these like very this very rich community around his film life, to just think that he had this whole separate life otherwise. I just can't even imagine what that would have felt like to then have those things suddenly interfused at like a moment of grief like that.
Especially that at that time at the funeral, where it's like the most amazing thing is that they were talking about Maurice and we were talking about Eric. So it was,
Is his brother still alive? Son frère?
I think.
I don't know. We don't know if he's dead.
We don't know. No.
We don't know.
I think so. Otherwise, Otherwise, we might have.
I do understand very well that to share, not to mix the family and the. I think.
Me too. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes,
Similar to that question, I'm wondering, did he ever talk with you about his faith as a Catholic? Like, was that something that he would bring into talking about his work at all, or?
The faith, for me, no, never.
No.
It was never. It was not boring.
We only know that he goes to church. Yeah, but no, he doesn't talk about that.
Never.
Mary. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I have a question. Whenever you can. Hi, I'm Jason.
Hello, Jason.
Hi, I just had a question about. I know you two both knew him and worked with him for over 20 odd years. I just wondered about whether it's your relationship or you think maybe his films changed over the period from when you met him to the end of his creative career. How do you think that your relationship changed with him, or at least maybe even the ways in which his films changed? I'm just curious what you might have to say about that.
Mary?
I actually, our relationship, I don't think it changed. I don't know whether I think that Marie would agree. We were close from almost the beginning and get closer and closer. I mean, it's like I said, like family. Like you don't change. We didn't we don't fall out. We didn't quarrel. We did. We have some maybe like minor disagreements on an edit or something, but we never had any major problems. So in terms of our personal relationship, I don't think that it really changed. And it's funny because I've often explained to people that he's one of these people that when he decided that you are part of this circle, you are in. I mean, and that doesn't that is without any reserve. That doesn't have it's not
reserve about time, because there is some reserve about what we can know or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, but on the other hand, it doesn't. I mean, that is it. You know, that there's a whole other side of his life that he didn't want to mix with us. But he showed his pictures of holidays and stuff. So
Yes.
I mean, that it's just that it's completely separate. But in terms of his films, the way that he's always, it's like when I was editing Astray et Céladon, his last film, I was really struck by how that film had all the themes that he was most passionate about all his life. I mean, that it's really has everything in it that he's always talked about. So I don't think fundamentally, I don't think that his cinema changed, his themes changed. Qu'est-ce que t'en penses?
Je pense que je viens de réaliser que je n'avais pas du tout compris la question.
Non, mais est-ce que c'est-à-dire, est-ce que le cinéma, son cinéma...
The way you end the answer, and I just realized, well, that's not the question I hadn't, and no, not at all.
Est-ce que son cinéma a changé au fil des années ou nos rapports?
Explained to me before.
Notre rapport avec lui.
Son style a changé avec les.
Oui, et aussi, est-ce que notre rapport avec lui a changé au fil de l'année?
Of course, it has changed with years, because at the beginning there was always a voice of the narrator. And
the very early ones, yeah, okay.
But then after he started with me, I'm always in.
There was a story in the autobiography about Raynette, the actress who played Raynette, and how there was conflict with Rohmer, and that he was unhappy that there was conflict.
Which conflict?
Conflict?
Je
crois que c'était avec la comédienne qui était dans Renette et Mirabel.
Ah, the brown hair girl.
Je me rappelle plus son nom.
Why? What about what? Conflict about what?
I can't remember. I believe there was a legal case.
Il y avait pas un litige. Il y avait un litige. C'est un truc qu'elle a voulu être nommée comme co-scénariste ou un truc comme ça.
I don't think so.
Oui.
Yes, you're sure? I don't know.
She thought that she wrote some of the dialogue. She thought she deserved credit, I think.
And she wanted money?
I believe so. I believe that she filed a lawsuit.
But I think that she lost.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
yeah, it seems that I think that's what happened.
We should talk about things that we don't remember. So, do you have any
I have another question.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I've been my thesis is sort of related to not just his criticism, but a lot of criticism that the Cahiers, the cinema people, were writing in the 50s and 60s. So we have a pretty solid record of his thoughts on a lot of cinema from that time. But I was wondering if he would talk to you about kind of contemporary cinema in the 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, if he was still kind of keeping up with films and if he still had thoughts about them.
Not to me. He didn't. I mean, I think it's just about that he was watching a lot more television than cinema towards the later years.
What television?
Yeah, Derek. That's a series of different dramas. Yeah,
Yes, but
police dramas and so on. Yeah, he loved it, Derek.
yes, you do remember, and you were watching it with him.
Yes, I was always watching it with him.
And
But
I was drawing.
Yeah, but I think that he did catch the films of his contemporaries, like Chabrol whenever he had a new film, or Rivette whenever he had a new film, and so on. But other films he didn't go see new films so much.
No, he had enough.
Yeah.
So I think we can sing a song.
What are you going to sing us? And see, you're going to sing us which song?
Now, I wanted to talk about the comics drawer, Marie Rivière, who is from Montreal. You must know her.
No, I don't know her.
You don't know her?
I don't know everybody from Montreal. No.
But she's good. She's young. She's the same age as the singer Cleo, and she has been doing a lot of comics about Eric's films. Yes, about the Aviator's Wife, for instance.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, really? Yes, she did. And yes, absolutely. And she did a new one, which name is you can see my breast like that.
We definitely are very happy about that. and
I'm afraid not, but where is it?
You were showing it earlier.
No, it's under my computer.
and can you what is the name of what's the title?
Million, M-I-R-E-O-N, Mal. And she did a nice portrait of me in the green dress.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
When I'm on the stairs. And this one, she's doing comics. And she did some Eric Rohmer films, mostly about the Aviator's Wife, about Pauline à la plage. And then she's doing a picture about a girl about depression. See? A girl how it is to be depressed and how it ends. It ends with the sun and with a train of hope, which is always suspended, not true. Can you understand what I say? You should. I like it.
Yeah. Tu peux taper. Est-ce que tu peux taper le titre du truc où tu m'envoies?
Comment je fais là comme ça?
I don't know. Maybe she can send the title. What is it called?
C'est comme
ça que je dispose que.
Well, this is the title, but her name is here.
Miriam Mal.
Okay.
From Montreal. And she did some comics for Eric Rohmer's films.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And then after for the depression. You see what it is, depression?
Yeah.
When you are sad and
depression.
Depression. You don't know if you are going to get out of to get better one day. It's what's going to happen to all of us with this quarantine virus.
But depression is her subject?
No, apparently she made the comics on depression.
Oh, another comic.
Yeah.
She made several books, but depression is the subject of her next book. It's so why I am disappearing. It's a new book. I think it is for you. We can share it. I got it. No, really.
Merci.
But about how young people can be, I say this why? Because I am fascinated why young people are so fascinated and understand so very well Eric Rohmer.
Tu veux quoi?
It's very modern for them, and they feel it and they like his films. Young people, not all young people, but those girls I'm talking about, and lots of men also.
I think in New York, when his films used to play here, they were associated with older audiences. People would play them at the theaters where, in the East Side and the West Side, Upper East Side, Upper West Side of New York, where older audiences would attend.
Oh,
But,
okay, great. But I think we had not answered any questions that were prepared by Nathan. But anyway, I think it's time to leave, huh?
Yeah, if I want to be mindful of your time, and if it's if you know, we can please feel free to leave if you'd like to. I would like to. I've asked my friend Evan Morgan, who was speaking earlier, to prepare a few notes on the question of what can a Romerian cinema do for us now in the 21st century. So I would like to ask him to speak a bit on that, just maybe as a way of like closing. And anyone who has to leave, including our honored guests, like please feel free if you'd like to head out, please feel free. But I'd like to ask Evan to maybe close us off with a few thoughts.
Well, hopefully it's not just me talking. If someone else wants to chime in here, by all means, please do so. This is not a prepared monologue by any means, but I was ranting at Nathan yesterday, talking over video chat as well, sort of about this question. And, you know, I was thinking about filmmakers who are either self-professedly Romerian filmmakers, fans of Rohmer, who I think have picked up a lot of his sort of practical, the practical lessons of Romerianism. But it's harder for me to think of filmmakers that I think of as truly like philosophically Romerian. I think the practices that we've been talking about, this kind of economy that Nathan's talking about, the way of making films in a small way. I mean, I think you see someone like Hong obviously picking that those kinds of techniques up. But it's much harder for me, I think, to find someone who really, I think, embodies the kind of classical aspects of the Romerian cinema and the kind of this being that Nathan talked about, and the kind of like Bazanian connection, which I'm sure Dan could speak to a bit. And so in sort of thinking through various cases of people, like filmmakers that come to mind for me are people who I think are more maybe philosophically oriented towards Romerianism. People like Emmanuel Mouret in France, who's I think a less obviously Romerian figure in terms of the practice.
Mia Hansen-Løve.
Mia Hansen-Løve absolutely is someone that I think comes to mind. Even maybe someone like Axel Repère, who I think her film Thérèse Lalonde Mademoiselle is I think a film that approaches the visual field in a way that's very different than Rohmer, but has an interest in the similar kinds of geometries I think that Rohmer is interested in. What's that?
Guillaume Braque.
Guillaume Braque, yeah, I think that's another person that definitely...
yes, really. The image, it's really... Okay. I hope it's good time to see us. It was a good time, but I think I didn't see everybody. Where is Keith? Are you Keith? No, you're not Keith. Where is Shinsato?
I wonder if he is still here. Keith might be gone.
He went to bed.
Yeah, but we it's bedtime for us, but not for them.
That's right. It's much later for you.
And Shinseto, where is the child?
He's here. He's here.
He's with
He's
you.
here. Yes, he's
Yes.
with us.
Oh.
Yes.
But this must be like 4 o'clock in the morning in Japan.
Yes. 5 o'clock.
Oh, no.
5 o'clock. Oh my God.
Oh, my poor Chisato. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Marie Rivière. Dans le rayon vert, vous avez joué Delphine, la femme de Delphine. Le rayon vert est no script and improvisation vous avez pensé la femme Delphine pour Marie Rivière.
Et je t'écoute. Si j'y ai pensé à la femme Delphine, moi j'aurais pensé à rien du tout. Oui. I think that's what he loves the most. That we don't think.
Yes.
Like people, actresses who get prepared to before acting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was my best film on this point. I never thought.
You have many good films. I don't know how to choose.
I have not understood you, Dan.
Hmm?
You can speak Spanish if you want, because I'm improving my Spanish.
Español.
¿Sí? ¿Puedes hablar en español?
How did you?
¿Tú no puedes hablar español?
No.
Pensaba que en Nueva York sí, hay mucha gente español.
Il y a beaucoup de gens ici qui parlent espagnol, mais pas moi.
Marie, I have a question. Do you ever think about if there could ever be a sequel to Le Rayon Vert? Is that a bad question, or you know?
I think it's a bad question because Mary has just laughed.
Yes.
I don't know why, because I have not understood the question. It's just my luck.
Yeah. I don't think there can be a sequel if there is. Actually, Marie, mais il y avait un court-métrage il y a pas longtemps that you are reunited with your boyfriend of the Rayon Vert.
On Facebook?
No,
there was a short film that was just made.
What's the question? I have not understood.
The question, c'était est-ce qu'il pourrait avoir une suite au Rayon Vert?
Absolutely not. No,
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not possible.
Without Rohmer, there's no possibility of a sequel.
So it would be not with me, because 35 years after, it's a pleasant story because it's positive story because the characters are young. Because it's not a story which would have been fun or positive if the character of Delphine and the other girls were our age. Because how can you imagine that me, when I'm 60, I look at the sun and I hope that it will work with this man, which is so older than me and hardly walking. No, it will be very sad. And there's a different, by the way, I wanted to say, my dear Dan, with your green T-shirt, I wanted to say that there's the different way of watching films. 30 years before and nowadays, the films are not received by people as they were at the moment were created. Because what? Because the eye of the comment tu dis les spectateurs, le regard
the audience, yeah.
Le regard des spectateurs, the eye of the audience had changed. Why? It's not because they had changed on this film, because the society has changed, and the young people nowadays are more concerned by depression, and they think very often that The Green Ray is a story of a depressed girl, and they can see themselves as a mirror in this film, and that's why I was very surprised when I introduced this film, and when I was in New York 4 years ago, and it was the first time I was hearing from the audience that this film is probably 80% sad and depressed, the story of a depressed girl. And I had never heard about this before, mostly not in the 90s, never. It was very enthusiastic, like a fairy tale, and now the eye of the audience is changing due to the conditions that we are living in our society. Do you understand what I say? Yes or no? Marie, have you listened to me?
Oui.
I thought that said something very clever.
You did say something very clever. Because in those days, it wasn't about a depressed girl. It was about a girl who knew what she wanted. I mean, that what she wanted was not in sync with the rest of the masses. I mean, with the yeah. So it was really about somebody who has particular taste. You know, it's in a way it's sort of like Rohmer's cinema. It's like a yeah.
That's why him and me, we connected on this point of view without having talk to each other about this point. But I was just saying that the point of view of the audience, the new audience, and the new society we are living in is changing the eye we can have on films. And it's not the same. I don't say that it is bad. I said it is different, that it touched them in a different way. That's what I wanted to say.
I think that's... Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Les films sont compris mal en tout temps, en toutes les époques. Mais
no, it's okay. I'm okay for this. I think it's a good comprehension. It's a good understanding also of the film. I just say that depending on the periods, you understand differently. Things appear to you differently due to the period you are living in. You can see another film which is Chloe in the Afternoon, and most of the time the people now are very attached or very interesting by what the girl Zuzu is saying always about her personage when she's depressed and wondering she's saying very depressing and deeply depressed things about like well, if I could not be there with a finger, I will do it. And I have noticed that the audience is paying a lot of attention to this moment to this sequence of the Love in the Afternoon, which was not before.
I think it's interesting. Dan was saying earlier that Rohmer was that the people who were going to see Rohmer films, at least in their original release, were older audiences. But I found that in terms of which French New Wave filmmakers younger audiences now are connecting to, it's much easier to sell them on Rohmer than it is to sell them on most of the other filmmakers. I feel like there's maybe something deceptively modern about his films that at the time he may have seemed more traditionalist than like Godard or Rivette, but seems to, I don't know, in the current moment, I think you're right that a lot of young people are connecting with it in a different way than
yes, that's what I want.
In my experience, people always judged Rohmer's characters, always. They would judge them in America, in the United States. They would think badly of them, especially like the male characters in Les Contes Moraux. I would always hear people misinterpret or impose a judgment that I personally do not think that Rohmer feels. I don't think Rohmer has those judgments, but audiences always did, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, and to jump off of that, I think that one of the things that maybe makes Rohmer's films feel more like timeless in a way is sort of how they feel very faithful to whatever time period they're predicting. Like they have a certain fidelity to the way people communicated and the way that like the characters would behave. So that's why like you could see that in his present set films, you see that in the Marquise of O, or Triple Agent, you have that sort of fidelity to the time period. I think that has made his films become more and more celebrated in that sort of way, or better received, I think.
Yeah, I think that they were always misunderstood, and that was profitable. And that's good.
I think they are always being rediscovered by a younger audience, simply for the fact that that they talk about certain things that are universal. And for example, I mean, it's not understood by a certain age, and then all of a sudden when they get to, I don't know what, 17, 18 or whatever age, all of a sudden they say, how come he's talking about us? And quite often that happens. Yeah, it's like, and I think that's what you were saying. You were meaning by something that's deceptively modern in his films, especially like when I every time I look at Collectionneurs again, the collector, I'm always struck by how amazingly modern the film is, and especially the opening sequence is just every time it blows me away. Yeah.
The sequence with seeing the three characters separately?
No, that's the sequence of Heidi on the beach.
Oh.
I will say that
I was also.
Oops, sorry.
No, you go ahead. I spoke.
Okay, I was just going to say that in my experience, I live here in New York. I know Dan and Eitan and some other people, but I do especially think that his films do speak to certain realizations about life and certain qualities of life that are more attuned to a younger generation. And not that you can't understand them if you're older, or that you couldn't understand them if you were younger, but I think there's a reason that a lot of characters in his movies are a very particular age, whereas he was not a part of that age for the most part. I mean, certainly in his earlier movies he was a little bit closer, but even in his elder years in the 80s and the 90s, he was still making movies about younger people. And still here in New York, I mean, when there's a screening of a Rohmer movie and I go to it, it tends to be mostly people in their 20s and 30s. Some others, of course, but it, generally speaking, tends to be a large subset of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Pierre Le Fou. Are you quoting Godard?
Yes, I forgot that, but I did love Anna Karenina, but I wanted to say the last cut.
This is the last cut, maintenant?
For me, it is. Yeah. I think it's 10. And I think we rent the place only for 2 hours. So I think
yeah, so please feel free, Marie, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to hang up. I'm going to leave this open just a bit longer in case there's any more discussion that people want to have. But for both Mary and Marie, please feel free to go to bed if you'd like. I know it's getting late there, and anyone else who's in a nighttime time zone, please feel free. This will conclude the official portion of the talk, but I will leave this open a bit longer in case anyone wants to hang out and chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no,
Thank you.
I another one of the people.
Thank you.
The other one there.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Hello. I didn't know you were here. Hello, I haven't talked with you, but you are from Asia, and are you in New York?
No, I'm in Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
Los Angeles. Mm-hmm.
Great, huh? That's wonderful. I don't know. I'm very. I know nothing about technology. I just learned about Zoom. Hello, I'm going to say you goodbye, and and thank you.
It was very nice to talk to you over the video, Marie. We have never spoken like this before. Only an email.
Thank you so much.
This was great. This is great. Yeah. So I'm going to say good night as well. And well, yes, thank you all.
But before you do, Mary, I wanted to ask one last question.
Yes, go ahead.
You directed some films as well.
Mm-hmm.
Have they been screened this century or this decade? Are they?
This century.
Well, I know one's
from
from the late 70s, one's from the 80s, and there's some documentary work.
Oh,
in there.
those ones! Oh my God, those ones!
I'm just saying this in case there's any programmers listening. And they're
well, of course, those ones. Anybody wants? No, not this decade, and not this century. No, they haven't been screened this century or this decade. And one is lost, actually.
Oh, which one is that?
Juste au cœur is the only thing that's left of it is a copy of a video that was screened on a wall.
Wow.
and but Homo de Soi still exists somewhere. It's actually had been digitized or re-scanned in. It's kept at the Hong Kong Film Archives. And there is one that I made in the not that long ago, but later than the 70s and 80s, which is a documentary or experimental documentary about Breitenbach, and that one has been screened many times, and that is also in the Hong Kong Film Archives. And Marie, who just left the room, has made a wonderful film called En compagnie d'Eric Rohmer.
Oh yes, in the company of Eric Rohmer.
Where
is that available to watch at all? That film, or
really wonderful film.
Yeah. Hello.
Is that available? Does anyone know if On a Company is available?
Yes, you can ask her. You can ask her. She should.
That it's an extra on, isn't it? Isn't it part of?
It is part of it. It is in the bonus of one of the
coffret.
Yeah, in the coffret. It's in the coffret. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And she actually has a lot of us in the film. Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, it is one of the last years of Rohmer. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, again, thank you. Oh, okay, there we go.
I have a present for you. Ça arrête, comment tu dis?
C'est quoi?
Le chapeau de rayon vert?
Yeah, the rayon vert hat. Wow.
It's much, because I washed it, it's much.
And I was actually in Biarritz about a month ago because there was the FIPA doc, and it was very. We stayed in a hotel just across from the lighthouse. Tu sais que j'étais à Biarritz juste en janvier.
T'as pris un hôtel à côté du phare.
Oui, c'était très émouvant.
We're all taking photos of you,
It's too small for me because now I have a big head.
There you go. Well, thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Dan, for so many questions. Thank you for everyone who's participated, and most of all, thank you, Mary and Marie, for joining us. As I said, this concludes the official part, but if people feel free to hang out further. But, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, goodbye. They were green too.
Allez, je m'en vais. Donc, à plus tard. Hein? D'accord. Ouais. Bisous.
Sans toi, je n'aurais rien compris.
Bisous.
Bisous.
Au revoir.
Big kisses, everybody.